amazing secretary is not with us this evening, so we're going to try to kind of keep things together and slow it down a little bit so we can make note of everything.
Who's talking?
I am Dave Seitz. I'm chair of the Planning Commission, so I'll be running the meeting tonight. If everyone could go on mute until I offer the opportunity to speak, then we'll be able to get through this a lot quicker fashion. So I do have all my members. I did a roll call. So we have Tom Barris, we have Steve Eisman, we have Leah, we have myself, Mike Van Buren, and Sandy Schultz. The only one not present tonight is Don Kaplis with prior excuse. Their first order of business, and for my Planning Commission members, because this is Zoom, we have to do roll call. We can't just voice vote it. So it takes a little bit of time, but bear with me. So the first order of business is to accept our agenda as presented and posted. I will entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Mayor,
Is that your name or mine?
how do you do this? How do you,
Start muting a few people
Do
here.
you need a second?
I need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion. So moved.
Sandy moves. I will second. Roll call members. Tom,
Yes.
Steve. Steve, come off mute. I know you're on here. I saw you. I heard you. Okay, Steve, I'm going to come back to you. Leah.
Here.
Yes or no, Leah?
Yes.
Accept the agenda. There you go. The chair says yes. Mike,
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes,
All right, agenda is accepted. Approval of the minutes for February 25th, 2020. Those are the ones Dawn had sent out. They were in your packet. Any comments, additions, changes, corrections? Hearing none, I will make a motion to accept the minutes from February 25th, 2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
And that was Steve. Thank you, Steve. Mr. Barris,
Yes.
Steve. Steve says yes.
Yes.
All right, there you go. Leah,
Yes.
the chair votes yes. Mike. Mike,
Yes. Sorry.
there you go. Sandy.
yes,
All right, so we have unanimous on both the minutes and the agenda is accepted. Now we'll open this up. Let me explain a little bit about process. So the first item of business is what we call public comment. Don't let that fool you. That is not a time to comment on anything on the agenda. That is a time to comment on something not on the agenda, but of interest to the Planning Commission. So this could be something we've done in the past or we may do in the future that interested you or you had a comment or question on that or some other matter. But there will be public comment on each agenda item separately. So this is usually not utilized too much, but I'll throw it out there just in case. And because this is a Zoom meeting, I often leave some very long pauses to see if anyone speaks up. If you know how to raise your hand on Zoom, that's helpful to do that too. That way Rod can see that for me and let me know, but otherwise just speak up. So anything anyone wants to talk about that's not on the agenda this evening. I mean, it's Planning Commission. We do such exciting things. Let's see here. I think we're good. All right. No public comment on items not on the agenda. So we will start out our agenda with our unfinished business. Our first bit of unfinished business is from our January meeting when we postponed the preliminary site plan discussion for the Chelsea Square 81 unit apartment complex, which is on a consent judgment property. This particular item was postponed because there were some changes in the last minute and there were some additional reviews that had to be done by engineering, et cetera. And then we had a traffic impact study that had to be forwarded to the county, and we've gotten that back in terms of their comment. The one area we're still waiting on for this project is the water and sewer capacity study, which I think the township board has hired someone or has gotten something going. I'm gonna have Carol comment on that here in a second, but that's where we're at in the process. This is a preliminary site plan, which is the first thing we do before we get to final site plan. And so what we need to do now is look into this and see if we have the information we need and so forth. So I'll open it up first to Carol to make sure I captured that correctly. And then I'll turn it over to the applicant to let me know where we're at. And then we can do a public hearing. So Carol, did I miss anything on that?
Nope, I think you covered it pretty well. I have requested some status updates on that water sewer capacity study. Fortunately, I haven't heard anything back from anyone on where that is right now. So I guess I don't have anything to report.
Okay,
Sue
thanks.
Dickinson's report was came in a little bit late, and she was sorry about that, but she did have some definite things that she wanted to discuss, and primarily the wetland delineation. So,
Okay. I will turn it over to our applicant. And Carol, did you email that to me? Because I lost that document somewhere.
yep, I just emailed it about 5 minutes to 7 for the MCI report. So if you haven't got it, I will email it again.
Yeah, shoot it again.
Okay. I will do that.
All right, thanks. I'm going to turn over to the applicant for the Chelsea Square. I think I saw Mr. Trupiano here, or if someone wants to speak for him, we'll turn it over to you.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dan Leclerc. I'm with Green Tech Engineering, here representing Joe Trupiano tonight. I'm the civil engineering consultant for this project. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you again. We were before you folks back in December with this project on a very preliminary basis, and we were tabled by you folks to get the opportunity to go back and look at some additional concerns and questions that you had back at that time. We had since made several revisions to the plan, and we feel now that we are very, very close to the point where we think that you folks should be able to grant preliminary site plan approval so that we can move forward with the detailed engineering and get some details put to bed and make sure that everything is in compliance in greater detail so that we can come back for final site plan approval. A couple of differences from the last plan. We ended up, we had some numerical issues on the last plan that you folks had looked at. We did reduce the lot or the unit numbers down from 82 to 81. Other than that, we did make several changes. There were some issues with respect to access to the neighboring property to the north for emergency access only. We've got fire department approval on that. We think everybody's okay with it. And just, I think we had pretty much covered everything. The one thing that we did talk about that was mentioned tonight already was the wetlands. We originally had received the topographic survey and the wetlands from the applicant. He had those done back in 2006. Late last fall, our company went back out and redid the survey, topographic survey. And we utilized the same line for wetlands, for the wetland delineation. Originally, the wetlands were done in 2006. And then right about 3 years ago, the applicant, Mr. Trupiano, had Brooks Williamson go back out and redelineate the wetlands. Those were, he actually didn't require us to go back out and tie them in again because he said they had not moved. So the line that was on the original, the wetland line that was on the original survey and the original site plans that we had been given that were over 10 years old were verified about 3 years ago. So when you look at the difference from 2006 to 2017, The wetland line hadn't changed. Mr. Trupiano is going to have us go back out and confirm the wetlands line once again, because it's something that, from a technical perspective, it has to be within 3 years. But we're not anticipating they're going to change over 3 years, since they hadn't from 2006 to 2017, or 11 years. So other than that, we feel pretty comfortable. There was some questions regarding infiltration and meeting the township's stormwater requirements. We did provide some information back to Sue Dickinson this week, and she felt comfortable that the stormwater pond at this preliminary stage meets the requirements of the ordinance. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we can go from there.
All right. Thank you, Dan. That's actually very, very helpful. We're going to get to questions in a minute, but we're going to start out with any public comment that anyone has on this particular preliminary site plan. Anyone besides the applicant in the public that wants to speak up on this particular project. We usually limit these to 2 to 3 minutes, but we will pause for a moment, see if anyone raises their hand or speaks up. Sometimes I think we need the Jeopardy theme song music or something we can play for a while. All right. This is a project we've had before us a few times, as the applicant discussed, and we can dive right into the Planning Commission members' discussion. So with that, usually I like to open it up. I've got 3 issues on my list, and I'll just throw them out there, and then I'm going to turn to my Planning Commission members to see if they have others, and then we can dive into those 3. You just addressed one of them. That's the wetland piece that Sue Dickinson had in her report. The second one for me was we need to take note that this is another project. We just did one last month where we have sidewalks on one side of the street, which according to our land development standards, both sides, but again, all dependent on what the Planning Commission wants the actual development to look like.
Yeah.
That's number 2. And then number 3 is, of course, the sewer water capacity issue. So before we get into those 3 meaty topics, anyone have anything else from the Planning Commission members? Nothing from Sandy. Mike?
Just one question. This is probably the first large apartment complex that we've had in the township. And just thinking ahead, but it may be worthwhile to recommend to the township board that they consider down the road, based upon police calls, do we need to establish a special assessment district for policing at some point in the future for this particular property? And that's partially to do with the density, and then the nature of people that live in apartments. They don't necessarily live there, and it's something I just think people should be aware of it, and let the township board decide, but I think we should at least put that up there for them to discuss. The other one is on the plans. There was supposed to be a mechanical plan, and I didn't see it in the drawings that were shown, so I don't know if they have one or not, or if that's pending. And part of the reason for asking that was the hookups to the buildings. I believe the previous meeting, they indicated that there would be one hookup per building. One of my concerns there is that if I'm in apartment A and I've got the water hookup for apartments B, C, and D in my building, can I turn them off and, raise havoc with my neighbors? So that's one of my other concerns.
Let Dan address the hookup question. As far as I know you mentioned some previous meeting on policing, and I think that's something Sandy can take to the board when they discuss the project in total, because that's, of course, policing powers are for the board, not the Planning Commission, but
Yep.
Duly noted. But Dan, did you have the mechanicals are part of the final, I would imagine. But per building, Dan, how many hookups?
Yeah, we are anticipating there's 2 different ways that we look at it, and a lot of times what happens is the sanitary sewer. What we're anticipating is one connection to each building. Possibly the 6-unit buildings, we may have 2. And the reason that we do that is because things can be handled generally with cleanouts. The issue that we run into a lot of times is with the water. We always like to design these projects so that at some point in the future, if the market for a rental community has a downturn, that these can be converted into for sale units. So we do like to have a separate water meter for each unit. That way, if at this point, this project is proposed to be a rental community, the water bills are probably going to be paid through one entity and then metered individually inside the units for each apartment. But at some point in the future, if this were ever to become a for sale development, we would keep the water meters themselves would be separate, because if somebody didn't pay the bill, there's a mechanism to shut it off. So that's what we're anticipating at this point.
Makes sense. Let's see, Steve, you shook your head. You don't have anything further unless something just popped in your mind.
Well, I was just curious. He said the fire access, emergency access to the north had been approved. I was just wondering, there was some discussion of the width of that last month. I wondered what the final width was.
Yeah, we increased the width of that driveway to 20 feet. And there was also, it has to be designed to be capable of handling, I believe it was a 75,000 pound vehicle for a fire truck. And it's also going to be gated with a Knox box on it. So it's not going to be for general public to pass through, but the fire department will have a key to get through that area in the event of an emergency.
Okay. Yeah, I remember, well, that was in the Chelsea fire letter. And then your latest document kind of responds to a lot of that too, which was helpful. I didn't find anything else in the Chelsea Fire Authority letter based on your response that you had not yet responded to. Check just to make sure, but I don't think so. Do we have the issue here with remember the last development, we had the parking on one side of the street, but in this development, we're doing the same thing. We're parking on one side of the street and then having a no parking lane fire signs on the other side, correct?
That is correct. We are proposing a 27-foot back-to-back, back a curb to back a curb roadway,
Okay.
which is wide enough to park on one side. In addition to that, we have pull-off parking stalls that allow for people to completely pull off the side of out of the lane of travel and completely pull off for visitor parking. In addition, each of these driveways are set up so that they're long enough that 2 vehicles can be parked in front of each garage door without impeding the sidewalk. And it should be noted also that we are proposing 1, 2, 3 barrier-free spaces in the pull-off parking spaces. So those parking spaces will meet the ADA requirements for barrier-free parking as well.
Yeah, no, I was happy to see that on this one. And actually this one layout is a little easier to do some of that. So it's a little roomier, which helps. Okay, before I get back into those 3 issues, I want to pass it open. Leah or Tom, anything on your end?
No.
Nope. Okay. The wetland. So I like what you said on the wetland. I do think it needs to be redelineated and confirmed. If you're willing to do that, then if we were to approve, I think I would just add that as a condition to get an updated inspection of the wetland lines as suggested by Sue Dickinson. The sidewalk issue, I think, is something we just need to note that we need to take note of if we were to recommend approval, and why we're recommending approval without that land development standard. Just so in this case, why is it different compared to others? And then the last tricky one for me is the sewer and water taps. And I may actually ask, I know our township attorney is represented on this evening. I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, really for this body to move forward, we look at the preliminary site plan standards. And those are all things that we've been talking about through these engineering reviews. The problem is not knowing whether 81 units is feasible with the capacity. So I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to conditionally approve based on a review, or are we messing things up? Because then we might have to come back and do a whole new plan that's, 69 units or whatever, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, my name's Catherine Kaufman. I am a partner at Balcom Sparks in Kalamazoo. My law partner, Robert Thal, is your township attorney, and he's at another meeting tonight. So I do have a background in planning and zoning. It's a large part of my practice. I've looked at your preliminary site plan review standards, understanding that this is for essentially kind of layout so that the applicant can go do their engineer drawings, which are going to cost some money. And, they want to make sure layout is essentially right before they start that process. One of the standards is a general description of proposed water, sanitary sewer, and storm drainage systems. I heard the discussion about the stormwater and the infiltration and all that, but I am, if it's my understanding from Attorney Thal that within the consent judgment, there's a certain number of REUs allocated to this property, and it's not 81. Okay, so it could possibly, once this capacity study is completed, downsize this project somewhat in some capacity. I don't know how many, I don't know how many buildings, or I don't know how it will be worked out. But I would hate to approve a preliminary site plan that was all based on 81 units with the capacity being there, engineering drawings starting, footings poured, utilities laid out, and then it all has to change. I mean, that does not make sense to me. The same thing with the wetland delineation. And I heard the fact here that they revised, they reaffirmed it a couple years ago. They just need to go get that line recertified and put back on the drawing, or certified as it is on the drawing. But those two things together concern me, because if you approve a preliminary site plan, as their engineer said, he's going to go do the engineering drawings. And I think it may even allow some preliminary site work in terms of laying roads or utilities or whatever. So I think that the planning commission needs to be very careful. I think a condition may not be adequate here to say, yeah, go ahead if you have the capacity, because we just heard your zoning administrator say she doesn't know when this sewer capacity and water capacity study is going to be completed. So it's a little bit of a sticky wicket here. I'm sure the applicant indicated they've already had they've been here a couple times already. They want to get going, but we don't want them to put their buildings in the wrong places or put too many buildings out there. So, it'd be my recommendation, and I'm sure no one wants to hear me say this, but if we could get some type of time frame as to when this study is going to be completed, table it until the study is completed. Obviously, that's why you have a 2-level site plan review, review process in your ordinance. Number one is to get the layout so they can go and do their engineering work. They're not going to do their expensive engineering drawings until they understand their layout. And I'm concerned here that if there's not enough capacity to service 81 units, what does that mean? And right now, I don't know the answer to that. But I would be, it would be my recommendation that it's tabled until that study is done. Now, I have to qualify that. Of course, obviously, you have to give the applicant due process and move this along in a, reasonable fashion. But right now, we don't have, in my opinion, all the information we need. And certainly we could, they can get that wetland line done fairly quickly, I imagine. But the study is the more difficult issue to tackle at this point.
No, that's exactly the issue I've been wrestling with. So here's a follow-up to that. If we have to wait and let's say we get this study back in a couple of weeks, do we have to do a whole new public hearing, or could we just call a special meeting and get this done? I'm just wondering how
No.
we balance speed with.
Well, so you've had, and I'll defer to your zoning administrator here, but it seems to me you've had your public hearing
Right.
tonight, right?
Mhm.
You were noticed, you had to ask for public comment, there was none. So the fact is, if you've closed that public hearing, and now the planning commission is simply in deliberation, the planning commission can just table their deliberation to the next meeting, or, whenever that might be. I understand, I'm sure for the applicant that they would like to go sooner rather than later. But I don't believe we need to have another public hearing, but I would ask your zoning administrator to comment on that if I'm missing
Yeah.
something.
Okay, I do want to jump in. So our published and noticed public hearing was back in January. And the February meeting, there was no updates because we didn't have any additional information. So this is just a postponement and a continuation from the January meeting where it was actually the public hearing. Dave opens it up to the public generously, but it was not renoticed. If we need to renotice it again, I'd be happy to do that.
No, you don't have to. I was just looking at your agenda and it says public hearing. So what essentially your required public hearing was in January. Since then, you've just been continuing to take public comment, is my understanding.
That's correct.
And so you do not have an obligation to notice another public hearing.
Okay.
That
Well,
was
that-
my error. Thank you for noticing that and making sure in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's confusing when we have to postpone things when we're waiting on a report. And so my interest in asking all that really was because I do want to balance, my look at my role here is trying to, balance the issues of speed, of allowing the applicant a speedy process, and then with having to have these things decided. So, and I'll let other members speak, but right now my thought process is I just feel tied. I'm not willing to move this forward when I don't know the capacity. I don't want them spending money and laying down if we don't know if it's 81 or less or more, or not more, but less. And then the wetland line, I really would like that done. But on the flip side of it, Carol, we have no idea when this study is going to be complete, or.
I'm sorry. I haven't gotten any response from anybody I've asked.
Okay. And it's in the hands of our folks?
I guess nobody will respond to me. It's very frustrating. It's an internal situation. It's like I can't even get an email back from our own staff and elected people.
Well, Sandy, I don't want to put you on the spot. You're brand new to all this, but yeah, I think if we are going to wait, we have to do our due diligence on our side to find an answer, right? So, and I don't know if Supervisor Brooks is on or others, but I would, from my perspective, from the Planning Commission perspective, we'd like this to be priority number one so we can get this done.
I will definitely share that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Understanding that the township recently approved a pretty sizable project just recently, and this sewer issue is just coming to light here. In the position that we're at right now, we are currently have an allotment through the consent judgment for a certain number of taps. I understand several properties in the township have taps allocated to them. So there are allocated taps available in the sewer system. They may not be allocated to this particular piece of property right now. That does not prohibit my client from going out and either buying another piece of property that has a allocation of taps to complete this project, and then sit on another project on the other property till the sewer capacity issue is resolved. So with that, I think that on behalf of our client, I would humbly request that you folks, if you feel comfortable approving the preliminary site plan, and then it would be my client's decision whether or not he wants to move forward at his own cost to prepare the final site plan and get that ready. So that because he's on a timeline to get this thing built, it would allow him to be ready once the sewer issue is resolved. Especially not knowing whether the sewer issue is a pipe that may not have capacity, or if it's a treatment plant or what it is, because we've never heard anything about the issue and where the issue has come from in light of the township just approving another project. So I think we are willing to go at risk on that with a contingency on an approval of the preliminary site plan.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that. The issue did come up though in the last two meetings with it's the pump station capacity, and it's there's also an issue of, okay, so if there's not enough taps in the consent judgment, then obviously you need more taps, and then how does that work out between the township and you all? And so I know there's several different pieces to this. I don't know, I'll turn it over to the attorney to see if I'm even close here, but that's what concerns me. It's not just an issue of I got to go buy more taps, or there's more taps over here. I mean, I don't even know if the pump can handle 81, right? So, and then that's a township liability, right?
So it's my understanding, without having read the consent judgment and just been prepped by my law partner, who I do know has read the consent judgment and is fairly conversant on it, they have 20 REUs for this project, which is way less than 81. Okay. So whether or not they can go buy other ones and hold those and apply them here, whatever, I don't, that's all possible, I suppose, but we don't know that tonight. So I understand time is of the essence on the developer side. I appreciate that. So I think it is incumbent upon the township to move on that capacity study, because if we don't have the information, you know, the planning commission needs it to understand how to approve projects. So it would still be my recommendation, even in respectfully hearing what Mr. Leclerc just said. You know, it's possible they may be able to acquire different REUs from somewhere else and bring them to this site. I can't say, but we know they don't have that right now. So it would, you know, be my recommendation to table this, but it's certainly for the planning commission's discussion. You did hear them say they're willing to take that risk. You know, I wouldn't feel comfortable on just in a statement here tonight by the representative. That would have to be reduced to writing, and I still don't feel, you know, would recommend that you move forward on that. But
Is it
that
all
is
right
up-
if I speak up here? I don't mean to interrupt, but I have.
Just hang on, Joseph. Wait till we're done here, and then I'll call on you.
that's my recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. First, I want to let Joe, you go ahead and speak up, and then I want to turn over some other planning commission members and get their take.
Okay, so about these taps, I have access to all of the taps to the adjacent property, and Carol is well aware that we can combine these properties, and then I'll have the 81 taps. So that's not a problem. That's not even an issue at this point for me. But does anyone know on the commission, anybody here that's present, do you guys know what the water capacity is, the water plant? Do you know what it produces every day? I do, but I want to know if anybody else does.
Not off the top of my head.
Well, your water plant produces 50,000 gallons a day. You know what it's capable of? It's
Nope.
capable of 600,000 gallons. That's one. Now, those consent judgments where they issued these taps, they never would have issued those taps if the sewer system did not have the capacity. This question's been asked and answered. And I don't believe this was an issue for the last couple of developments that just got approved. Was that an issue for the 29 single-family homes that use, by the way, twice as much water as what we're going to use? Twice as much sewer capacity. Was that an issue for them to get their approval? Was it an issue for Sylvan Crossings? You guys are going down a slippery slope, let me tell you. All right. This project is not going to move forward until we have these issues resolved. That's a given. But to hold me up at this preliminary stage, it's arbitrary. And it's the wrong thing to do. And I'm sorry if I'm being a little intense here, but we've got a lot of money invested, and time is of the essence in projects like this. So I'm not telling you what to do. All I'm telling you is you're forcing me into a whole different position. And Catherine, no offense, but I don't think you know anything about the sewer and water on this project. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Right. Other planning commission members have anything, and then I'm going to wrap up.
Dave, I just don't understand. If our lawyer's telling us, our attorney is telling us that we're supposed to,
GetRoman.com/news, and we'll take $15 off your first month of EV treatment.
Hang on a sec.
Directly to your home.
All right, go ahead.
if our attorney is telling us that we should hold off, table this, I don't like the idea of doing it, but it's awful hard to go against the attorneys, right, wrong, or otherwise. She's telling us we probably shouldn't go forward with this. I sort of agree that we need to table it. If we have to have a special meeting, we'll have a special meeting when we have our answers. But I just don't think it's a good idea to move on this.
Right. Okay. Steve, you want?
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with Tom. I don't think we should promise something that we can't provide. You know, if we're telling them they can have so many sewer taps and we can't provide those, it puts us in a very bad spot.
Yep. All right. I respect the applicant's desire to get going. I understand financially that this is an issue. I understand the capacity of our water tower and what we have and what we haven't used yet. But I also understand that our job is to take these proposals as they come in. And we've done, a couple, right? We're just starting to develop in this arena. These are consent judgments. The first few, there was no question. There were the number of taps available and as part of the judgment and the utilization. And we did review them. We did ask those questions during the meetings. So I'm going to continue to do that here. So I am going to recommend that we postpone until the water and sewer capacity issue is decided. And beyond that, I also definitely want this wetland redone because without that line, I think the attorney makes a great point, right? You're going to start to run things and set foundations and put things in places that I want to make sure they're in the right spot. And that requires that line. So as the chair, I'll make a motion to postpone pending further information from water and sewer study and the completion of the line of the wetlands as requested in the engineering report.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by members? Hearing none. Mr. Barris.
Yes, support it.
Steve.
Support.
Leah.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Mike.
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes.
The item is postponed and we will do everything we can and put every piece of pressure. And I do mean, Sandy, that we definitely want to have the supervisor on this. And if he has any questions, to give me a ring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Yep. Thank you. All right. We have quite an audience tonight, and I'm sure they weren't here to hear that thrilling discussion. So maybe they're here for something else. So we'll get on to the next item of business, which is an actual public hearing that we're opening for the first time. That's why it's under new business. And this is for a rezoning request for a piece of property on Pierce Road. Let me explain a little bit about process here, because we have a lot of folks on the line who I think maybe this is your first time at one of these. And I certainly was in your shoes one day, and that's why I decided to volunteer and do this was to make it a little easier to understand. So when a applicant comes to us with a request to rezone a piece of property, the Planning Commission, which is all of us, is asked by the Township Board to take that on and to figure out what our recommendation is. And then we send that recommendation up to the Township Board, who then makes a decision. A rezoning request is just that. It's just to rezone. It's not a request to approve a particular project on a particular site. In fact, our standards of review for a rezoning request, as set in case law and elsewhere, really delineate that we need to focus on whether this zoning change is apropos for this subject piece of property, and does it match and does it meet the master plan and other factors. But we do not consider what specific project is on it. If an applicant wants to bring a specific project and make it conditional on a rezoning, we could do that, but that's not what this is. This is just a rezoning request. And then part of the process is, if the applicant were to get this rezoned, either we approve it or we send it to the board and they approve it, or however that worked, then the applicant has to submit a site plan. And in this case, maybe even a special use application to put a project on the site. And then that requires a public hearing, followed by what you just saw, which is a preliminary site plan, a final site plan, so 2 meetings at least, if not more. And then it goes to the Township Board for another meeting and then for approval. So what I'm saying to you is this is step 1 of many, many, many steps. And maybe it ends at step 1, maybe it ends at step 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe it goes all the way through. So hopefully that helps. But we did have an applicant for this parcel on Pierce Road, and the way we're doing this is I'm going to allow the applicant to present this rezoning request, and then I'm going to open a public hearing where we'll take public comment. So I think the applicant reached out to Rod and wants to show something. Is that still the case? And is it Kathy going to run this from your side?
I'm going to start, if that's okay.
Okay, cool.
So just to start, I'm Kathy Kyneth with Macon Engineering, and I'm representing the applicant, who is William Kearns. And also on the meeting tonight is Mr. Kearns and also Charlie Kahn, who is representing the owners of the property. So if it is okay, I'd like to screen share with you.
Yeah, I think Rod just has to turn that on. There you go. Oh, Rod, you're sharing your own screen.
Can you see that?
No, I think he's. Is that yours or Rod's? That looks like Rod's screen. Hey, Rod, exit. Let's see here. If I
It
can
looks
help
like
you.
we have a Chrysler fan.
Yeah, well, that's Rod. That's how I know. Let's see here, Rod. Let me see. I can do it. Oh, I don't want to do that either. Rod, can you stop sharing your screen down at the bottom? Push share screen, stop. Did I lose you, Rod? There you are. You're muted, Rob. Can you come off mute?
Yep, I'm trying to get my window back up so I can, Dave. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. You were muted, so I didn't know if you heard me.
Yes, I did.
Okay. We'll get it going here for you, Kathy. I can try something here. I can share mine.
Thanks, Dave. I'm really sorry.
It's all right. Let me try to share my Midwestern Consulting report. There. Now we want to stop sharing. There we go. All right. Now, let me see if I can let Kathy share, not screw anything more up.
Maybe she has to request to be shared.
Yeah, it says I've been disabled. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, that's Rod's problem, not mine. Well, while we figure it out, if you want to give me an overview, then we'll see if we can.
Kathy, did that work?
That did work.
All right, there we go.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to start out and give you some basic information about the site, and then Mr. Kearns is going to speak and give you some information about his business, and then I think Charlie would like to say a few words. And I'll be brief so that we don't have a big long presentation here.
Okay.
This first slide is showing the overall area where we're requesting the rezoning. And this is I-94, the yellow line down here. It's the railroad tracks, and then this is Pierce Road. And the area that we're looking to rezone is this area that's bounded by the railroad, Letts Creek, and Pierce Road. So one of the reasons for the proposed zoning here was that it has been based on the township's master plan. And this is the future land use map out of that master plan. And the site is right here in the middle of the screen. It's part of this purple area. As you can see, this purple area makes up the area all the way down to I-94, the east and the west sides of Pierce Road, and up to the railroad tracks. So we're looking at just this north portion of that purple area. This is also part of the township's master plan. As you could see on the previous slide, it was future land proposed to be a mixed use. And in that mixed use, we have several zoning classifications that can be used. There's general commercial, highway commercial, multifamily, business park, and industrial. And so this project is proposing to rezone it to industrial. I'd just like to point out that the master plan talks about having a mix of uses here, and we're only using this small portion on the north. That means there's probably 75 to 80% left that could have other mixed uses in there that could make up some of these other uses for the commercial and the highway use. One of the reasons this is zoned mixed use is because of its close proximity to I-94. This site that we're looking at is only about half a mile off of I-94, and there are public utilities, both sanitary and water, in Pierce Road. The next slide, I just wanted to show you this. This is the whole parcel that belongs to the owner. And Mr. Kearns is looking at just purchasing this north parcel 1. That's approximately 32 acres here on the north side of Letts Creek. So we also, with our submittal, submitted a concept plan. And the reason we submitted that concept plan was we wanted to give you some idea of the scale of the development that was being considered for here. On this drawing, north is pointing to the left of your page. So this is the creek, and then the railroad is over here, and this is Pierce Road. The project proposes possibly dividing this into 3 lots. And the Kearns are looking at putting their development on this most westerly lot, which is about 1,200 feet off of Pierce Road. Again, we realize that we're going to have to build a driveway to get back there, and we are going to have to run water and sewer back to the site. But we really wanted you to see just the scale, that we're not really using up the whole site, and also that there are some natural buffers that are provided by this location. We have Letts Creek, and this sort of stippled area is the wetland that has been taken off of GIS. We haven't confirmed that yet, but as you just talked about with your previous project, that would be part of the site planning process. We would confirm that delineation and see the true extents of it. And on the north side, it's buffered by the railroad along here. And of course, as the site plan is developed, we would provide all of the required buffering and screening that's going to be required to meet the code. So that's kind of a summary of what we're planning. And I would like to let Mr. Kearns now talk and describe his business to you a little bit.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. As you said, Dave, it's really not it's zoning. It's not specific to me, but I certainly have been a topic of a lot of the discussion, I think. So I'd like to spend 2 or 3 minutes at least describing who I am, giving you something.
Yep.
So I am Bill Kearns. I'm from Manchester, just south of you guys. I've been here operating my business for 25 years. I am a volunteer fireman, very active in that. I'm also a public safety diver for the Lenawee County Sheriff's Department. So it's in my blood to somehow serve the community, I feel. I think towing is just another way that I do that. I do enjoy helping people. I do earn a living doing it also, though. I won't tell you that I don't. I came about this project. It was not me coming up to Chelsea to thinking that there's a avenue here I could create and have a job or a business. I was quite content down here doing what I've been doing for the last 25 years. The Metro Dispatch, who is Washington County Sheriff and MSP during the last contract, came out in March of last year, eliminated 2 towers along the 94 corridor. They put Sylvan and Lima Townships in my area. I had known nothing about it till that came out. It certainly changed a lot for me. And like, again, I was comfortable where I'm at. For the last year, I have been towing cars that do come to a lot, and that certainly does a point of contention, back to Manchester. And we're doing fine with that. In fact, I get paid mileage. The biggest problem is ETAs. For the first responders, if anybody knows any, talk to local police departments, fire, EMS, and talk about 15-minute additional response time. That's where we really struggle. They don't want to wait that additional time, and reasonably so. There is also the motoring public. I think there's a concern, article I read or a study about 5 years ago stated that about 50% of traffic fatalities are in secondary incidences. That's in the traffic queue, backed up. So the quicker we can open these things up, the quicker it is for the motoring public, for the first responders, all the above, which means me getting out there quicker. I can, during inclement weather that we had a month or 2 ago, we really struggled to make good ETAs like we needed to do. So with that, I'm trying to put something up there to assist with the community and do the best job that we can. We talked about the storage or the yard or whatever you want, impound, and it seems to be a bad word. I get some stats. 11% of the vehicles in January and February came back. I average about 300 calls a month in the 3 locations I have: Manchester, Saline, and Clinton. 11% or 35 cars came back in those 3 locations. For January and February, I was able to do a report. The average stay was 5.2 days. So just some numbers that I think we might be getting excited about, conditions that really aren't there. I would like to point out we're almost like a police department, that nobody really likes us until they need us. I think anyone tonight, if you're at the meeting when you drove home, could have an incident. Now we're all home, so we may not have that issue, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying, that family members, spouses, breakdown on the freeway, on the 52, wherever it is, sitting there 15 more minutes is probably not the ideal condition. You'd like a professional, courteous, prompt tower there for you. So that's why I'm coming up there to do that. I got a little bit of an issue, I said, with ETAs. Secondly, I'm a little compassionate to the Chelsea folks that have had to drive down here to retrieve belongings, cars, whatever that might be. I do think it would be nice to keep, I find myself apologizing. I'm sorry I don't have a location in your area. I'm trying. So Kathy talked about the physical location. Charlie's going to also. So I'm just talking about me, and I know that I understand the board can't look at just me, but I'm not here to ramrod this down anyone's throat. I'm not out here trying to do any of that. I really am here to work with the community, with the planning commission, putting something that is appeasable or palatable for all of us. And I will do everything I can to do that. A couple examples of ETAs. I was just thinking before I got ready for this meeting, it was a couple months ago, a young female ran out of fuel on 94. It's about midnight. I just really wanted to go to bed. I was the closest one, so I went and I hurried up there. When I got there, come to find out she had a 3-year-old in the back seat with her. Not with her, but in her back seat. She was so thankful that I came. And you know what? I was perturbed that I was out at midnight, but again, I got that feel of that I was there to help somebody, and it was a good feeling. That's where I need to be closer to. Wherever I go, I think people are going to have concerns about us being in their backyard. So I don't think there is a ideal spot. I think we got to choose the best spot. An example also of us is, I don't know his name anymore, the gentleman that owns the Kavanaugh Lake store. His wife last fall was in a horrific accident. Him and his brother-in-law came down on a Saturday. I spent about an hour with him trying to help him with what we saw at the accident, what the car was, what he needs to do, things along those lines. The next Saturday, he came by and brought us a big bag of Insomnia cookies from Ann Arbor and also treats for my dog. So I think we provide more than just towing of your car. I think we really do provide a service to the community with those two examples. I do an awful lot with fire department. I brought, if anybody is around the fairgrounds this fall, I believe it was, we took up 10 vehicles at no charge to the fire department to train on for extrication. I do that annually with them. I am an instructor as well as a participant in many of the trainings. So I think that's, Charlie's gonna, my next paragraph is about the lot location. Charlie will talk a little more. Yeah, I'd like to say that for the planning commission, I appreciate you're in a difficult spot, and I think we need to, I hope you look at the good we will do for the entire community. And I do understand the neighbors being upset. We all feel that way when it's in our backyard, but I also think for the good of the entire Chelsea, Sylvan community, that we need to look at whether this is a good idea or not. So thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. I appreciate your comments, and it is helpful. I think Charlie was going to say a few words too.
Thank you, Commissioner Seitz. I appreciate your time and the opportunity. I used to be a resident of Sylvan Township. My family is still residents of Sylvan Township, so very familiar with the area. I am an associate broker with Swisher Commercial and a partner there, and have had this property listed for Jim Comball since September of 2013. The Comball family settled this property many generations ago, and I believe they homesteaded it. And along that time frame, they've accepted changes of a railway coming through, high power transmission lines coming through, and an highway interstate dissecting their property, as well as sewer and water assessments being assessed to them to help pay for that. At that time, did not feel it was necessary. Mr. Comball purchased this property from his parents and farmed this over the years as a part-time farmer until it was not economically feasible for him, and has rented it out since then. He's looking to sell off some of this property because he has an increase in property taxes for that. Since I've had this property listed in 2013, I started out with 50 acres. I had somebody look at it to do an apple farm. The soils were too poor to even grow apple trees on it. And then I've had people look at it for a solar farm, and the zoning was not, township doesn't really have an ordinance for a solar farm. I've had people look at it for a semi-truck wash, and also for apartments with a strip center. Those are two uses which could probably be done here. It was not what Mr. Kalmball wanted to be a neighbor to, as he directly still owns a majority of this property, and his houses will be the closest to this operation. We also have the support of Chris Minnick and Mark Werner, who's also two other properties directly are the closest in proximity to this potential operation. I went in front of you back in August of 27th of this last year, just to preliminarily ask you what your thoughts were regarding this proposed use. And you said to be conscious of screening and visual impact to neighbors in the community, of which we will be, and follow through on this process. So we look at this as not a very high impact compared to the potential to do 120 apartments with some retail. That could be potential use here as well when you're looking at the zoning and the master plan. So we feel this is the highest and best use for this property, as it is bounded by a railway station, very close to a highway interchange, and has high transmission lines through it. So I thank you all for your time, your attention to this, and we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Seitz.
Thank you, Mr. Crown. I appreciate your comments, and I do remember you coming forward, and I'm glad that you did. And so at this point, I do need to open up to the public hearing portion of this, and then we'll have the planning commissioners discuss it further. Obviously, during a public hearing portion, folks want to ask questions, and I get that, but then we get into a back and forth, especially in a Zoom environment, it's hard. So what I'm going to do is say everyone can comment for 2 to 3 minutes. My members and I, we take notes and we listen to these very carefully, and then we can respond to them, or we can have the applicant usually wants to come back and respond, and we'll try to limit that too, but we'll allow it. And then we'll get into our discussion portion. But the other thing I want to note is we did receive numerous emails and letters, and all of those have been in the hands of planning commission members the minute they came in. The township staff did an amazing job of either getting those to us or forwarding them or scanning them. In fact, I was reading one minutes before the planning commission meeting started. So all those are in our possession and have been read and will be part of the information packet that we give up to the township board, because our job here tonight is to gather information, make a recommendation, but also give all that to the township board, who then has to decide ultimately on the zoning request. So with that, I see several hands up in, I'm not going to do these in any particular order. I'll start with the hands up because it's easiest for me. And then once I get through the hands, I'll open it up and say for people to speak up. Remember, 2 to 3 minutes if you would. I hate cutting people off, but certainly a lot of people on here, and I want to let everyone have their chance. So we'll start out with a hand up by someone named Sandy. And if you could say your full name for the folks recording the minutes, that'd be great. So Sandy.
Hi, my name is Sandy Egler, and I'm here with my husband, Doug. We live on Garvey Road, and the railroad tracks goes right through our yard, and so does Garvey Road. I take exception to the comment that the person selling the property is going to be living closest to this, because they're not. Those of us on Garvey Road are going to be living closest to us because it's right out our front door. As far as, this is a necessary business, and it's, and they understand how upset we are, but they're more concerned with their response times to accidents. That doesn't hold a candle to residents who have been living here, have been paying their property taxes, and we're going to have to listen to the noise all night long, every day of the year. We happen to have a special needs granddaughter who lives with us. My daughter will be speaking to that effect, and how bad that sensory issues that she has. She freaks out if a hang glider goes over the house. We can't turn the vacuum cleaner on. She cannot live next to a tow yard that's going to be operating all the time. She'll never get any sleep. None of us will. And to have industrial right out there in a residential, in an agricultural community, I don't know who came up with that idea, but I know the master plan's under review and that needs to change because it's ridiculous to think of having industrial land on Pierce Road. It needs to be down actually by the highway. And the seller of the property, they've got plenty of property down there by the highway, but it would be in their back and front yard and they don't want it there. I think this is an absolute terrible idea to put industrial on Pierce Road. And I'm praying the Planning Commission sees that that is just not a feasible location for any industrial. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. We will move on to Tom Atkinson.
Hi there.
There you are.
Hi there. Tom Atkinson. I live at 1001 Pierce Road. And do appreciate what Mr. Kern does. It's a necessary service, but I don't think that right here next to all of our homes is the appropriate place for this kind of zoning. I think that there are places down by the highway that are actually available for sale right now that would be more appropriate for it, and probably down in the commercial zone area. I'm going to start with a few months ago, I approached the Carol in the zoning office. I talked with Carol and Kurt about the idea. We have a farm field next to our house, and I was looking for a place to house my business. I was just exploring the idea of whether I could put a building on that land to have my business. And they explained that, of course, I could always apply, but it probably wouldn't work because it's important to the Planning Commission to take into account what's happening, how this would affect the other homes in the area. And well, my building could be completely unobtrusive. They'd have to rezone it commercial to be able to do it. And then it's zoned commercial forever. And if we move in 5 years, the new owner could go and put a retail store there, put a convenience store, and that would not be good for the neighbors. And that's a good explanation. I respect that. And so I abandoned that idea and went and looked elsewhere. And I'd like those same standards to be used in this case. Looking at the future use in the master plan, I think there's two parts in the master plan that talk about what a mixed use area is. There's the table 6 on page 51 that Carol put up there a little bit ago. And that puts up what looks like a laundry list of anything is possible to put on this land. But when you look at page 48, which is the text description of what a mixed use zone is, it's very different. To quote it, this is directly from page 48, while general retail, service, and office establishments are the primary uses envisioned for this area, mixed use developments may also include more intensive commercial businesses as well as office, research, and light industrial operations. But it specifies a mixed use development. If you look at, there's a development on the southeast side of Dexter, where you got a business park that's surrounded by homes, by neighborhoods around it. That's a mixed use development. If you look at behind Target on Ann Arbor Saline Road, that area there, you've got condos, you've got houses, and then you've got office buildings. There's a retirement home, the Ice Cube, all back there. That's a mixed use development. What's being proposed here is just to change the zoning from agricultural to industrial and place 2 of the plots up for sale. That's not a development. That's just changing it to industrial. It's industrial forever, and that means that factory buildings could be put in there. And all the houses in the area, our property values are going to drop. We're going to have light pollution. There's going to be noise pollution, and then the potential for material pollution, which is right next to Letts Creek. Also, because they did bring up the, what their plan is, for putting the tow yard on there, that is directly addressed in the mixed use description on page 48. To quote it again, automotive service stations and heavy automotive repair are not compatible with the mixed use category. And further, it says any use which requires the need for outdoor storage is not as emphasized in the master plan, is not compatible with the mixed use designation. So the uses that they're wanting to put this land for are not appropriate. There is an industrial designation for future use in the master plan. That's down by the Chelsea Proving Grounds, not here in this area.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
I'm going to move right along to Zach is next on my list.
Hi, my name is Mandy and my husband is Zach Porter.
Okay, Mandy.
Yeah, I couldn't change it. Sorry. So I first want to start by saying that I plan on purchasing the house here on 18100 Garvey Road from my parents. This was brought up due to our second child having extensive medical needs. My families, the Eglers and the Weirs, have been in Washtenaw County and Sylvan Township for almost 200 years. So we have deep roots here. The reason that having this property out my front door being anything other than sites for farm or even homes is just like, I couldn't even imagine having to look at that, hear that, deal with that all day long. So the main reason is because of our daughter. She is born with a very rare genetic disorder. She is 1 in 330 worldwide. The doctors at U of M in Ann Arbor never seen a child with Kura syndrome before they met Abby. She is what we all call a medical unicorn. Some of the things about Abby, when she was born, she could not breathe. They had to put her on life support to sustain her from dying. She required a tracheostomy before she was 7 weeks old and connected to a ventilator 24/7. We have worked very hard with Abby. She is almost 4 now, and she has since been weaned from her ventilator, and she was able to get decannulated. Some of the things that she suffers with due to Kura is, so the first thing is she's almost 4 and she cannot talk. She cannot walk on her own. She requires extensive therapies every week just to sustain a semi-normal life. She still requires oxygen at night, and due to Kura, she has hypotonia, which is low muscle tone. And this easily tires her out. If she does not get an adequate nap every day, and if she does not get a good night's sleep every day, she's not the only one that suffers. We all suffer. I am her mom and her main caregiver. And, I even need and deserve a break every once in a while. She also suffers from sensory issues to noises, and she has a cortical vision impairment. So things like the vacuum cleaner going off, the blender, the small little planes that like 4 people can fly in that go like pretty, close to above homes, she freaks out at. There was one time we started the tractor up right outside her window when she was napping. She woke up blood curdling screaming, and it took me over 30 minutes just to calm her down. She doesn't understand. She cannot speak for herself, so I am speaking for her. And she has an older brother who's 6. She has a little brother who's 5 months old. They have to live a completely different life having a special needs daughter or sister. And like Tom already, said so many good things as far as there's other properties that are actually just on Old 12, right off the highway, even closer than this one, that is for sale. And, you know, if this is something that is a 24/7, 365 day a year business. I used to be a professional baker and pastry chef, and that was also my job. 365 days a year, never got a day off. And I understand that. But to make a little girl who can't speak for herself suffer from light pollution, other pollution, and sounds, it's just, it's not okay. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Renee. And again, let's try to keep these 2 to 3 minutes just because I want to make sure everyone has a chance to express themselves. And very important to me. So Renee, there you are. Oh, you might be muted, Renee.
I hit that
Come on.
unmute. Hi,
There you
I'm
go.
Renee Townsend. My family has lived here in Sylvan Township for almost 30 years now. We live on a private road right off of Garvey near Spruce Run. And we moved out of the city to this area because it's rural and beautiful and peaceful. And we've been here a while, so the area has changed. It has, you know, more houses have been built, families have moved in, but it's still rural and natural. And I realize that the master plan future land use is mixed use designation for this area, but I would argue that this area has really become more residential even since that master plan was drafted. I wouldn't even agree with the mixed use designation, honestly. That being said, I realize it's there. This land in question, from what I can see in the master plan, sits on the Sylvan Township wellhead protection area. The master plan on page 49 states, and I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. Due to potentially negative impacts, the industrial designation is limited in scope and is not compatible and will not be planned for areas of known groundwater recharge and new township wellhead protection zones. So that right there sounds kind of like strike 1, 2, and 3 to me. Beyond that, as Tom stated, as everyone has stated, we're worried about the creek that runs through there. Everybody out here is on a well. The light pollution, the noise pollution, our property values are going to go down. The scenery will be destroyed. I attended the board meeting on March 16th discussing the open space preservation plan. And during that meeting, Supervisor Brooks stated that the township wants to make sure that wildlife habitats, views, wooded lots, and wetlands are preserved. Approving this request goes against all of that. I encourage the Planning Commission to listen to the tax-paying residents of Sylvan Township and send a very emphatic no to the board on this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move next to Mike Van Gore. Apologize for the name. Mike.
Hi, thank you. No, you got my name right. Planning commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As an architect, when we bring projects forward and design them and plan them, we have to utilize as tools the written and documents of the municipalities that we are working in. And, those are the zoning ordinances, those are the master plans. Some of what I'm going to say is dovetailing into what Tom said, but the future land use of this area is mixed use. While I don't necessarily agree with that, that is the zoning district. And it lists the items there that are, potential uses in the mixed use. It doesn't necessarily say that these are the zoning districts that have to be within the mixed use. So for example, on page 48, it talks about general commercial uses, high density residential uses, more intensive commercial operations, parks, open spaces, blah, 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 office uses, office research uses, and light industrial uses. If this is a light industrial use, it should still be able to be used as a mixed use zoning district. One of the items that Tom mentioned that I think is very important is any use which requires the need for outdoor storage is not compatible with the mixed use designation. The proposed plan, the concept plan has about 54 cars, if I remember right, stored behind a fence. That's an outdoor storage. Those vehicles are going to get rained on. Those vehicles are going to get snowed on. They're outdoors. I understand that there's a fence to try to screen it, but all of us residents on Spruce Run Drive are at a higher elevation. We're going to be looking right down into that lot. The fence is not going to do anything for that. I find, trying to rezone this parcel as industrial does not make sense when there are already commercial and industrial lots for sale within Sylvan Township. There's a parcel for sale, which Charlie actually has listed on Brown Drive, which would be compatible with this use right then and there. It's right next to the highway, would not require any rezoning. So I just find it a little bit difficult to accept the fact that this parcel needs to be rezoned to allow this use here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'm going to move to going down the list. Dan Russell.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. This is probably one of 4 of the issues that we've discovered so far with the future land use map as it stands today. And I think we're hoping and dreaming of fixing that. I think the neighborhood that I live in also has this sort of broad brush stroke across it that really doesn't make sense based on what is actually here. So if probably everyone on this call has driven by this in the last week or two and said, yeah, you know what, if there is a tow yard sitting there, it just doesn't belong in that spot. And like everyone else has said more eloquently than I, there's plenty of property. I admire the businessman wanting to be better and at his service and do everything he can to help us out when we need him. I just think that there's a better spot for him to be. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin Townsend, I think, is next on my list.
Yeah. Hi, Dave. Thanks for the time. Mike actually made a couple of my points, but I just want to follow up on them real briefly. I'll pose a rhetorical question to the folks making the proposal, and I also respect Charlie's interest in finding a parcel so that he can continue to, expand his business and earn his living and serve the community. I believe all those things he said, but it's just this is not a very good fit. And I would ask, did the folks who put together that proposal, the engineer and Charlie and such, did they drive up on Spruce Run and then figure out how they were going to create a visual buffer that would overcome the height elevation that Mike Van Goor just mentioned? I don't think it's possible, and that speaks to what a poor location that would be. The other thing about the buffering, I think the engineer mentioned that Letts Creek is a buffer. I wouldn't consider that a buffer as I would as much as a threat in terms of groundwater contamination, the potential watershed issues that my wife Renee mentioned. So I really think that's the poor term for Letts Creek as being a buffer. It's really kind of a threat to the environment in this area. And then finally, I think Mandy made the point better than any of us could. We all have reasons we chose to move into this area, but what they probably share in common is that they're predicated on the master plan being adhered to, followed through on, so that we chose the right area to, bring our families, raise our families, pay our taxes, make the community better. And having a tow yard that clearly violates the master plan is not, consistent with that at all. And again, I can't add anything to Mandy's story. So that I'll leave it at that. Those are my points. Would appreciate the Planning Commission making the right decision in this case. And I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila, last name, I don't want to mess it up. Graziano.
Graziano, just like it looks.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the public comment. I also appreciate Mr. Kern's information about all his volunteer service. Rock on, you really do help people. I want to address the issue of Pierce Road itself. It's an interesting location that's being proposed because we have the railroad crossing, which when the arms come down, traffic gets backed up. We all know that. It's one main road from the highway to pretty much anywhere north of it. And it's also extremely, it's a particular stretch of road from the highway to that driveway, the proposed driveway, that is heavily snowdrifted in the winter. Anyone who's traveled that stretch knows that the snow accumulates right there, and it's the last bit of road to be cleared off. So I'm picturing it being really busy, a tow yard in the winter because everybody's getting in accidents, and then the tow trucks coming down this road that's almost impassable, and then trying to make wide turns in and out of the driveway with cars in tow or not, and then getting caught by a railroad sign. And it sounds like a cluster of really bad situations that could happen on a relatively regular seasonal basis. And just the driveway, because we all know that, tow trucks have to take a wide curve into sometimes poking into the lane going in the other direction, which could be extremely hazardous to the traffic traveling from whichever other direction the truck is going. And so I just wanted to throw that in the possibly not brilliant ideas category. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for thoughtful comments. I'm going to go to Patrick. Patrick, where are you? There you are.
Thank you, David. I know somebody was in front of me, but I'll try to keep it short. I've been around long enough, I guess, to have developed a certain way of looking at these things. And I tend to look at it as fundamentally, if somebody comes in and does something to their property, what is the harm to the other people in the surrounding area? And we argue about the master plan, we argue about zoning and everything forever. And I know there are different stages in the process, and you shared those with us, David. I just would like to have your commitment that at some stage in the process, that the suggested harms that have been discussed here, such as light pollution, noise, traffic, possibly environmental damage, will be thoroughly scrutinized before any approval is made to go forward. That's where the rubber really meets the road. I also have another comment, because what I heard, especially from Tom saying here, and maybe the developer as well made this comment, that there are other uses that were at one time proposed for this land or the surrounding area, such as a solar farm, for example. And Tom mentioned a small building, I think, that would be involved with coffee production. That would probably be rather inobtrusive. And zoning is just getting in the way of a lot of good things, because you can't get any kind of special use put forward without having to rezone the land. And what's happening is, there could have been a solar park there. I mean, maybe people have different opinions on that. Tom could be having his coffee operation, which probably doesn't hurt anybody. And because these other things are not happening, we end up with this. We end up with this tow yard. And I would like to suggest that we take a real review at our zoning designations and maybe allow more special uses in them for things that are good before we get more applications for things that are less desirable. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Let's go. I know, Charlie, you're there, but I'm waiting till the end because I always give it an opportunity for applicant or anyone related to applicant to talk at the end. So I'll get you. I see your hand.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did want to open up for those that, don't do the whole Zoom hand raise thing, which I'm totally all about that too. So is there someone, and again, a lot of you submitted letters. I see some names that I recognize from the letters, and I completely appreciate that. Normally I would go through just about every one, but there were so many that I'm going to packet them up for the township board too. So wait a minute, I got a new hand up there. The name is a little off for me, but
Hello, it's Lois Whiteman.
there you go, Lois. Thank you for saving me. Okay, go for it.
One thing, I'm in agreement with things that people have already said. I would like to bring up one additional concern, and that is that the proposal was for 3 parcels in this section that's being rezoned. So that means 3 different industrial things. And we have no idea what's proposed for parcel A and B. The impound tow yard is proposed for parcel C. I think that the township loses some oversight by doing a blanket rezoning of this to industrial. And then you have no oversight with what goes in there. I think that's a grave concern. I'm also very concerned about the water table, Letts Creek, the watershed. We're all on wells, and that is a concern that we have good water. And I agree with the other things. This is not a good place for an industrial rezoning. Thank you. There are many other places where this good operation could go that would be much better.
Thank you, Lois. Appreciate that. Let's see. I know it's Tom Atkinson's hand, but that's not you on video. So I'm going to allow the second person to go under that name.
Hi, I'm Naomi White. I'm Tom's wife.
Hey,
And hello. And additional thing that I would like to raise a concern about is I'm wondering if the road can handle all that extra traffic with big trucks without significant reinvestment by the township into, beefier infrastructure in that regard.
Thank you. Good.
That's it.
Thank you for that. Good point. Let's see. Tracy Dennis. That's the name that's up there, but if I'm wrong.
Yeah, this is Randy, her husband, and my wife Tracy is listening. We live on Garvey Road, about 2 or 3 driveways down from Spruce Run Drive, 17850. And my wife and I chose Sylvan Township. In a few weeks, it'll be 9 years we've been here. We chose not just Sylvan Township, but this part of Chelsea, because it is so rural, and we have a beautiful, heavily wooded lot with a 1-acre pond. And we enjoy the wildlife that passes pretty much unencumbered through the Letts Creek area, the deer, unfortunately the coyotes. And this is a concern that with the rezoning, there'll be no end to this. First it's, parcel that's going to be fenced off and cuts off the wildlife's travel, and possibly I'm a mechanic. I recently retired, and you're bringing vehicles to a lot that I drive by the thing 3 or 4 times some days to get to and from my house. And it would all seem that all these petroleum products and antifreeze, gasoline, things from cars that are damaged, just regular leaking cars, will just flood right in down to the creek. There's just no good spot, at least as I've driven by and, you know, especially now, taking stock of the way the land rolls. And it's a concern to me that Mr. Kern mentioned that the problem is he can't get his tow truck on the road fast enough from Manchester. And there are plenty of places right next to the Kern shop right on the main street in M52, which is of course vacant. And the storage and the rescue of people who are stranded are 2 separate issues. So, you know, obviously it's a drag to drive down to Manchester to pick your car up if it's been impounded or towed, but that in no way has any effect on the response time of getting the tow 10 or 15 minutes sooner. Because wherever Mr. Kern parks his tow truck could be a lot closer. And, you know, being that he has space there in Chelsea. Again, my concerns are, you can call them selfish. I do not want my property value to go down. I actually bought this beautiful 12-acre parcel with a beautiful house and pole barn and everything I want as part of my retirement plan. So my wife and I are fixing up the property, fixing up the house, and eventually we intend to sell it for more than we paid for it. I don't want to give it back and walk away with nothing because the neighbors are, you know, no prospective buyer wants to live right next to the junkyard. So thank you for allowing me my say.
Thank you, just appreciate it. Laura Van Goor is next on my list.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. One point I want to raise that has not been raised as yet, and many valid points have been, I think, well iterated, is that this new traffic burden on old US 12, but also at Pierce Road and the I-94 interchange is already the site of, the intersection is already the site of several accidents each year. If you look at MichiganTrafficCrashFacts.org and look at that, Sylvan Township, specifically the map and the hot spots, that is a hot spot where, at least in the past 5 years, it's flagged as having as much as 30 to 36 accidents at that intersection. I myself have come across them, and I can't help but think that rezoning to industrial is going to increase the volume of traffic that's flowing through that intersection, and it is extremely dangerous. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Lori Campbell. Lori, got your hand up. Oh, you might be on mute. There you go. Oh, you're still on. There you go. Now you're off.
Yep, this is Lori Campbell Eli and my husband Bill.
Eli, we live on Garvey Road. We were just talking about the intersection ourselves, about trying to get off there. Also, Pierce Road is not a truck route, so if you ever made that industrial, I don't know if the bridge is strong enough over Letts Creek to support that kind of traffic or not. And, you know, they're talking about the master plan, you know, the way it's set up and mixed uses. Well, master plans change every so many years. You know, you have them, then you change them. Eventually, this is going to become more residential, and you'll probably end up changing that. But if you let this go through now, it'll be too late. And to have that kind of a business here, the response time, he's just as fast from Sunoco as he is from there. You know, if the cars broke down in Manchester, he's actually faster if he's in Manchester than he is in Chelsea. So, you know, to say that the response time being here, it doesn't really make any sense. So, and everything else everybody else has said, I agree with completely. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you both. Appreciate your comments. We do need to get moving here. I mean, I want to give everyone a chance, but we I also want to make sure we get to the business at hand. Is there anyone else with a burning desire to bring up a point before we get into Charlie? Okay. Just all right. Not seeing anymore. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to Charlie.
There's a hand up.
Oh.
Jerry.
I can't see.
Jerry Cadline.
There we go. Jerry?
Come off.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep. Now you're good.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that's been said so far tonight. And I guess the only thing a little different take is my wife and I moved from a farm. We retired and downsized, and we're looking for a rural community where we could, you know, spend the rest of our days and just have a nice community to live in. And so we looked at all the master plans and everything in the area. We certainly studied the one for Sylvan Township. And I have to say, as I read through that document, that there's like a common theme going through that whole document. And just to quote a couple of them: preserving the rural character of the township through growth management, and protecting the integrity of existing and future residential areas really struck home. So now here we are. We've been here since last July, and it just breaks my heart to think, sitting in this beautiful community, it just breaks my heart to think if I come out of the driveway and come down Spruce Run Road, if I'm going to look on what basically is going to be a junkyard. And especially knowing that there are already designated industrial areas right here. So I would just hope that the Planning Commission will take all of that into consideration, and let's not, we don't want to put a scar on this community. We just don't want to do that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I want to make sure I don't miss any more hands. So I'm gonna pause till it may seem like a while. Doug. Doug.
How's it going?
Doug, I don't think your last name is Galaxy Note 20, so go ahead and tell us your last name.
No, my name is Devin Kalmbaugh.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring up some things that people already talked about, like people having children with sensory issues and things being too loud from that lot, and also the road not being able to actually handle the weight from more traffic. And I don't know if people have actually really watched Pierce Road during the day and watch how many semis actually go through Pierce Road, even though it is not a truck road, but they still take Pierce Road in fully loaded semis. And the whole thing of like children having sensory issues too, and it being too loud. Well, if you live on Garvey Road, what about the trains going through? Because me living on Pierce Road, the train is exceptionally loud down here towards the end by Old 12 also. So I don't really understand the whole thing of a tow yard being too loud for that. And I think the whole thing of the light pollution also, that is kind of being blown out of proportion also, of how much light would actually come from said tow yard. But there's a lot more to be said, but I'm just going to end it right there. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you commenting. All right, let's back to the applicant. Charlie, you want to say a few words, and then we're gonna get into
Yes.
some more questions.
Just because some people had called out some other properties that I have or have signs on in the area. I have sold everything I have listed on Brown Drive. I'm slated to sell the last piece and close on that April 1st. So that's been under contract for 6 months, and sold the other property right next door, which is under construction. Our firm does have some other property along I-94 in Old US 12. The price of that property is considerably higher and not economically viable for an operation like this to purchase. And that's why Mr. Kearns is looking at this piece. And also, I'd like to talk to all of the Planning Commission members and bring to light that no matter what type of use for this multi-use zoning, this future zoning, this master plan for this area, even if it was all single-family residential, the concerns of light, noise, increased traffic, and impact on the environmental are going to be an issue no matter what change is done to this property. I've had this property listed for sale since 2013, and I don't believe I've had a call or an offer from any of these people to purchase this property. So if that was their main concern of wanting to keep this property agricultural, they could have stepped up, called me, and written an offer. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Charlie. I need to, okay, Rachel, you got a quick couple minutes you can
I'll
get
make
her in
this
there?
really quick.
Thanks, Rachel.
This is what I envision putting my kids to bed to at night. So for whomever made the comment about the sensory and the extra noise, we're not interested in having the lights and the noise and the extra. We just moved here a year ago from a city area. We moved away to get out of this. And you think you're going to drown out that noise? Yes, the train comes through. It's loud in the winter. The leaves come on the trees and it quiets down a bit in the summer, but it's still something that we were aware of when we moved here that we would have to deal with. A truck yard was not something that we had anywhere on our radar to have to deal with, and it's not something that I'm interested in negotiating with.
Thank
That's
you,
all. Thank
Rachel.
you.
Thanks, Rachel. Another pause. All right, we're going to move ahead and get to the Planning Commission discussion and close the public hearing. A lot of you raised points that we definitely were iterated in also in the emails and the notes. Before I open it up to questions, concerns of Planning Commission members, and then go through anything we've received from Midwest Consulting and others. And at one point, I do have some questions I want to ask of the attorney on process, but I did just want to note a few notes I jotted down. I think one of the difficult things in all this process, and something I learned, I came to this Planning Commission not really knowing too about a lot of all of this several years ago, many years ago, and the master plan at the time, the township supervisor at that time, Mr. Cooper, wanted to update the master plan, and we were required to do so because it hadn't been updated in many, many years. And we went through that process, and it was tough to get feedback. And so, but I think the reason was the township really hadn't experienced any growth changes that sort of these types of discussions came from. So I like having these discussions because when the Planning Commission redoes the master plan at some point, which it will be probably in the next few years, or I would imagine, then now we have an actual open dialogue going on about these areas. This master plan, it's hard to get a handle on this. So there's zoning, which is the actual zoning of the property, which is a part of our ordinances, right? And then there's the master plan. The master plan sets out a future land use designation, which is essentially an overarching umbrella of what could happen in that land area of the township based on the considerations of the master plan. And so I think the applicant or someone had brought up that when the master plan was redone in 2017, this was looked at as mixed use because number one, there was water and sewer available there and it was near the highway. But when it was designated mixed use, a lot of you did a great job reading the actual language of the master plan. We did put caveats in there because we do recognize that Sylvan Township is a rural community. Myself and many others got on this planning commission to preserve a lot of that character. And so when we said mixed land use, we did make a few caveats to that. One was, and I think you all pointed out very, very well, that was we wanted uses that, you know, were in relationship to the physical and natural features. In this particular area of the township, Letts Creek is a major issue, right? It's a watershed. There are definitely some environmental concerns of anything you do around it. But when we come in with a zoning change, we definitely have to look at that, and we have to look just at the master plan and just at that zoning piece of it. Unfortunately, we don't get to look at what the proposed use is unless a plan is conditional on the zoning change. However, in this case, we can look at industrial and say, what are all the uses under industrial? And someone rightfully pointed out that there are more than one lot on this particular plan, right? So the one plan is to have this facility in the back piece, but there's two A and B lots up front with nothing done to them. And so the concern is you're rezoning all of it. And so when you rezone all of it, then you open yourself up to industrial uses on all of it that maybe they go beyond what's there in the plan. So I'll just say to my fellow members that my concern is that this is a very small section of a large plot that's being rezoned. And my concern is that we were very careful to put in language in our master plan that said automotive service stations and repair are not compatible. I realize that there's no service station or repair being offered here, but that tells me that we were concerned about what types of uses come in there in terms of light, noise, and its relationship to the surrounding Letts Creek area. And the other thing we said is we were very clear twice to say no outdoor storage is compatible in this mixed use designation. And that says something to me too. So I say all that to say I have these concerns. I'm going to open it up to other planning commission members to ask questions and thoughts and concerns. And then we can dive into, Carol's report or the Midwestern Consulting report. But I think it really comes down to our standards of review at this point. We don't really lay them out in our ordinance, but through case law, and we asked the attorney to really provide me a piece of that tonight. And it really is clear that we have to do this just based on the zoning change. And the zoning change is actually what concerns me here the most. I'm sure if a site plan came forward for a facility like this, there's certainly concern, but there's ways to work on it. But just zoning this whole thing industrial is where I'm having trouble. So I'm going to open it up to Mike. Well, before I do, I know Carol's on the line too. Carol, do you want to add anything in before we open up to questions from members?
No, you covered everything quite well, Dave. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Mike, I don't see everyone's face right now, so let me pull that up. But anyone can butt in.
Hi, Dave. I concur with your thoughts. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Mike, man of many words tonight. That's because you're doing the job of secretary, so I assume all these great notes are being taken.
I've got 7 pages right now.
Okay. Leah, Tom, Sandy, anything?
Sure, Dave, I'll go.
Yep.
We don't even know if there's going to be a tow yard there. That's what they're saying. If you rezone this 32 acres, 33 acres, it could be anything falls in that category. So we really don't know where we are with this. And with all the negative response, I'm gonna have a hard time agreeing with any of this. But on the flip side, there could be a lot of houses put in there with sewer and water at the street there. So there's a like a double-edged sword here with that water and sewer there.
Yeah, you make a good point, and we actually heard that from some of the folks in the audience, which I appreciated, which was, once you look at the master plan, you say, okay, there's mixed use. So what's under mixed use, right? There's general commercial, there's high density residential, there's mixed developments, there's parks, open spaces, conservation areas, office uses. And again, I think we listed this out because we were very careful that this property we knew had been up for sale, and there was a lot of proposals that came in or ideas around similar things, but we wanted to make sure that mixed use was really balancing the two items. And if I read from the industrial district in our ordinance, once you make it industrial, the uses really do start to go more towards a lot of different industrial pieces, including this. If there were to be some sort of tow yard, that would be a special use. But I think Patrick brought it up. He said, well, zoning's getting in the way of things. I actually don't agree with that. I think the master plan needs input, and people need to engage and do that, because then when people come in and say, how do you use zoning to change this to something I want? Then you go back to your master plan, you create this designation. I also don't want to say we didn't take our time to do. I mean, this planning commission worked hard on that master plan, and I know there's some people out there that have, sort of accused us of doing certain things for certain people or whatever. I mean, it's just total hogwash, right? Like, we were trying to create a master plan, and we asked for public input, and it's not perfect, but it's where we're at. And I think what we need to do is look at the master plan, because I think it does a good job of looking at physical and natural features. So I don't know. Leah, Sandy, I don't want to close you guys off.
Well, I agree with the concerns that you listed, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so my one thought process is, I'm trying to figure this piece out. The applicant came to us for a zoning change for the whole piece. And this is where I'm going to ask I'm going to ask our attorney for some answers here. If the applicant were to move forward with, let's say the applicant said, okay, let's step back and try a conditional rezoning just for that one lot within that. Number one, is that even possible? Or number two, would that be, would that have to start all over again? So if the applicant went through and got denied for the entire thing being a zoning change, could they come back for that separate piece and come back either as just the piece or made it conditional on some sort of use? Is there a time frame then that changes things? Would they have to come back to do reapply for conditional zoning? Would they have to wait a year? I just need to have that process clear.
So there's nothing in the law that says they would have to wait a year, and I don't believe there's anything in your zoning ordinance that says they would have to wait a year. But it would be a new application, and you'd have a whole nother public hearing so that the public could respond to whatever that application actually contained. If it was
Right.
different from, the whole 32 acres we're talking about now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think logically, I'm not saying it would fix the issue, but it would be a different issue if you had one lot that you were asking for a conditional rezoning, where you actually had a project, a plan, a site plan that could be looked at the same time, and it was just for that lot. That's different to me than rezoning the whole thing industrial. And I don't know, I throw that out there. I don't know if that's possible, but.
Well, of course, and just as an aside, we cannot require that the applicant do that, but it's certainly
No.
an option under law.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Carol, I saw your, maybe it wasn't Carol. So question back to Kathy or the applicant, your thoughts at this point?
Yeah, for one, I'd like just a little bit more clarification from the attorney that if my client, Mr. Kearns, was to buy the whole 32 acres are you saying that he could divide it into the 3 lots and then just conditionally zone one of those? And then what would happen to the other 2? Would they
Well,
ag, or are you saying he has to conditionally rezone the whole 32 acres?
well, a couple things here. I do not know enough about the layout of the proposed 3 parcels to say whether a land division could be effectuated so that that parcel you're talking about tonight could stand on its own and get rezoned on its own, or however, you know, obviously the application for tonight is for 32 acres to be rezoned to industrial. You know, if in fact they came in and said, we only want to do the parcel C or whatever it was, we'd have to confirm, you know, could that land division happen? Is there enough adequate frontage? Would there be enough, you know, area, et cetera? I can't answer those questions right now. You can apply for rezoning for any part of a parcel. If you know, I'm going to, so maybe let me take a step back. I know that Attorney Thal prepared a memo to the Planning Commission in terms of what you need to think about when you're considering a rezoning. And I'll just read the headline of each subparagraph so everyone understands. Your zoning ordinance does not have a specific list of standards, but under Michigan law and case law, again, many of the things we've heard tonight, consider all the uses that would be allowed in the proposed district. So we've heard people say, you know, if the tow yard doesn't go in, what else could go in there? Number 2, compliance with the master plan. And we've heard a lot of discussion about the mixed use future land use district, but we've also heard that some of the text in the master plan put caveats on when that would be appropriate for industrial in that component of mixed use, and you know, whether or not it would be appropriate for a tow yard. Number 3, consistency with zoning in the general area. And there's been talk about how although this is master plan for mixed use across the road on the other side of the road, it's master plan for something else. We've heard about consistency and compatibility with general land use patterns, suitability of proposed uses in the proposed district, adequacy of public services. You know, we've heard there's public water and sewer out there, so that does support the idea of a mixed use or some type of different component than ag or low density residential. Traffic, there was discussions about that. Reasonable uses under the current zoning district. You heard the applicant's representatives say this property has been listed since 2013 without an offer. So you need to think about the adequacy of the zoning, the reasonableness of the zoning in the current zoning district, and identified public needs. So those are the kinds of things that the Planning Commission will think about when they consider this application. And again, they're only making a recommendation forward to the Township Board. But again, the most important being compliance with the master plan. You've heard the Planning Commission discuss at length how they prepared the master plan and what they thought about. So whether or not, you know, you could rezone part of them, sorry, that's why lawyers are paid to talk. So sorry about that. It's getting late. The question was, can I rezone part of it? You could submit a rezoning request for part of it if in fact, you know, there was a way under the Land Division Act to divide off that part. Whether that request would make sense or not, I can't say, given all the factors we just heard about. So yeah, you could. The conditional rezone would have to, it would be a new request, and we'd have to go through the public hearing all over again. So if there's anything I left unanswered, please ask me again.
No, that's great. So Kathy, I mean, you know, it's like clear as mud, right? Like
Yeah.
the answer is yes, you can do it technically. The thing that slows you up is, can that parcel be divided under our land division standards enough to split that off, make it its own parcel ID, and apply for its own zoning change, even conditional upon a specific use. So I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if Carol's even looked at that. You know, just looking at the parcel, it's big enough for that, but I don't know about access to the road frontage and so forth. So
right.
Carol, do you have a comment on that? And Charlie, I do see your hand. I'll get you in a second.
I was just going to say, I believe there is a land division application into the assessor, and she has acknowledged that she will review that upon their request to pursue processing it.
Okay. Clear as mud. Cart and horse. Charlie. Real quick.
Yeah, so I believe we could do a conditional zoning on all 3 parcels and do preliminary site plans on all 3 parcels. We've been holding off on doing the land division application until we knew which direction we were going, but are prepared to do so once we have clear direction on which way this is going to go. But we could do preliminary site plans on all 3 and do conditional zoning with all 3 with uses, because I have a very good indication of what the other 2 uses would be, which would be very low impact and very similar type of uses as this, actually lower impact and less intrusive. So I feel confident that the applicant could withdraw their application if he decides to, and go back through it with a conditional zoning that would be more precise, with less openness of unsuredness of what the future would bring, and bring more peace to the planning commission and the township board.
Right. One of the reasons that I even brought that up as a potential, and that might have a better positioning in all this, is that just the way that lot is structured, and the fact that this particular use that we've been aware of is all the way in the back. Part of it is, okay, so those front 2 pieces, that does kind of impact the entirety of what it is in terms of being congruent with what's next to it, right? So if you look at the way we have to judge it, the things that the attorney just went through, one of the things that sticks out to me is this, how does it fit in with the land use around it, and the fact that there is this wetland, there's other pieces, and some of the comment and feedback we've had, which is about, what does this look like to the people across the road? What's it look like to? Well, those first 2 front pieces really do make a difference in that. So that's why I brought it up. Right now, I think if you've been reading the tea leaves, there's major concerns amongst the planning commission members in moving this entire zoning change forward, or at least recommending it that way to the township board. So if that's the case, and we recommend that they don't make this change, and the board agrees with that, then you're out all that time and effort, versus the other option is you could do these other options we talked about. But that's completely up to you as the applicant. We just do what you ask and what you've asked us to look at. So, I don't know, Kathy, or if you guys have any opinion on that, or if you want us to just go back and discuss it and not move forward with any decision tonight. I don't know.
Well, I think that, I guess at this point, I think I need to go back and discuss it with Mr. Kearns. I don't want to put him on the spot right now. You just gave us a whole lot of information, and
right
here we got completely clear answers on what was possible and what wasn't possible. And we'd like to confirm that we could do what is even being discussed before we actually made a decision about whether we proceeded with that or not.
Yeah, because, and I'll ask Catherine to sort of clarify procedurally how we do that, given that we just had the public hearing. But if it were me, I would really want to look at that land division first and say, is that possible? And because that really does affect that whole parcel, and your zoning request is for the whole parcel. So, I think I could be pretty open and honest and say, at this point, I don't feel comfortable doing the whole parcel. I don't know what I would do, because I don't have any idea what the other uses or conditional zonings would be, but that's just where I'm at. I heard the same thing from Tom. I heard it from Mike, and I don't know, Steve, if we want to give your feedback, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Dave, I'm gonna have a hard time with all the residents and stuff like that, with the view going for the tow yard in the back. But I'm only one person, but I probably shouldn't even have said that, but I heard a lot of negative about it. So it's gonna, something drastic has to change I'll look at anything.
Yeah, no, I understand your opinion. It's hard to hold back, but when we're looking at the actual standards tonight, if we were to move forward on a decision, we would look just simply at those standards that Kathy outlined, that Catherine outlined, which I point back to my original statement. But
yep.
Dave?
Yeah, Leah.
Do I understand right that we do not allow any outside storage?
Well, the zoning ordinance does not say that. The master plan says that we don't want what does it say? How's it? Not compatible. So
Okay.
that would be an issue of contention, right? You can't write that in your master plan and then ignore it.
Okay. Yeah, I have a concern with Letts Creek there and some of the lowland, I guess.
Yeah, which really gets into a site plan review, which again, we can't do right now. So in the interest of moving, at this point, our options are to make some sort of recommendation to the township board on this request, or Catherine, I assume we can.
If the applicant wants a tabling, they can request a tabling. If the planning commission wants to table it because you feel you need more information, you can do that, or you can make a recommendation and move forward to the board.
Yeah, if the applicant wants to table it, then we'll entertain that. I can't say that I want to table it because I know what I would do right now on an actual zoning of the whole parcel. I don't.
Hey, Dave, could I speak a moment here?
Yeah, where are you? Oh, there you are. Yep.
So, bear with me. I'm not the most versed at this process. So, I am confused, and it's my ignorance is that I do read special uses, that storage issue. Definition of storage, I'm a little unsure, but I certainly see under special uses where that is part of it. The number 2 is bus, truck, taxi, rail terminals, truck cartage facilities, storage of trucks and industrial equipment. So, but I don't know, maybe the master plan supersedes that. I'm not sure. But I'm not opposed certainly to bringing, I know the unknown. We don't like that. So I'm not opposed to, I'm not sure the process. I could do lot C for my towing company, and I could bring you 2 other applicants for lots A and B and their uses. That's it. One of them potentially is an electrical contractor. Kathy, from the legal aspect, is that allowable? Again, I bear with my ignorance.
So let me just explain how the master plan and the zoning work together, okay? The master plan is the guide, the zoning is the law. The zoning should follow the plan. So when the master plan says this area is appropriate for mixed use, and then it says mixed use would be commercial and possibly multiple family and industrial, but it says, but not outside storage. Okay, that is an indicator to the planning commission, the township board, that while this says mixed use and industrial zoning might be appropriate in mixed use, not if it's outside storage. So what the planning commission is saying is, when we have to consider a rezoning to industrial, which could consider all of the uses allowed in industrial and possibly, as you say, in outside storage, they will consider whether or not that complies with the master plan. All right. And so while the zoning ordinance may say, as you're reading me a special use from the zoning ordinance, the zoning's only going to happen if those uses under the zoning ordinance are only going to happen if the zoning's changed. And the first thing the planning commission is going to look at, and then the township board, in terms of changing the zoning ordinance, the zoning is the master plan. And some people read, I think it was on page 48 or 49, it specifically says, you know, industrial's allowed in mixed use, but not if there's outside storage. It specifically says no outside storage. So I think if the tow yard is going to be an industrial and is going to plan to be outside storage, I think that may be a problem in supporting the rezoning, but I don't get to decide, okay? I'm just telling the, you know, what the master plan says, what the zoning says, and zoning should follow the plan. So whether or not, you know, I don't know anything other than how I don't know how your business would operate, any of that, but I want you to take a close look at those pages of the master plan, because the first thing they're going to look at in deciding the rezoning is this in compliance with the master plan? If you go to a conditional rezone, I want everyone to understand it allows you to have uses that are allowed in that zoning district. So if your use is only allowed as a special use, we can't conditionally rezone to a use that's a special use. There's another step in there. So, you know, please look at that industrial zoning district. Don't hinge your whole application on, I'm going to conditionally rezone to something that needs a special use approval. Okay? Because we can't make that agreement. So I just want to make really sure you guys don't go off and change your whole application if it's a special use in the industrial district for this outside tow yard. And then when you bring, if you do want to bring two other ones to come up front, understand if we conditionally rezone to what those, whoever they are, a contractor and something else, that's what the zoning is. So if they don't come and they don't come to use that property, it's rezoned and conditionally rezoned for industrial for a contractor, and that person never comes forward, we're locked into industrial for a contractor. So then we're either going to go search the world for a contractor or we're going to rezone it back to something else, right? So the conditional rezone is only as good as what you bring to the table. And we should never lock ourselves into a conditional rezone if we aren't 100% sure that we're gonna follow through on it. So for what that's worth.
And it does sound like that's my bigger concern, is that if I tell you it's going to be a contractor, I have to perform, but it limits the town, the planning commission from all those other possible horrid uses, the big factories and the, you know, all that stuff. So I'm trying to give them some fail safe or some assurances there.
You're correct that in many cases, a conditional rezone is used to show the municipality that you're not going to get the whole world of industrial uses, you're going to get this. And if you show a site plan and a landscape plan and an elevation of the building, then people understand what will be there. But then the flip side of that is it locks you in as to what's going to be there.
Yes, okay. And I'm good with that. I'm still old fashioned. I still kind of think a man's word is good, but I understand that's not as good nowadays. So I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. And it is frustrating. I will say that, since we did start this back in what was it, August or something, that we first asked. So I do understand it's a tough situation, but I'd be willing to table, and this did come to us last night at 6:30. And got at 6:30 the night before on the nth hour. It was a lot to swallow, all this information, and try to make a good decision on something I'm not the most knowledgeable about. So I'm trying my best, but I would be willing to table it. And it sounds like we could. My biggest concern was I thought I'd have to zone all 3 parcels towing, and I thought that was silly because I really don't want 2 more towing competitors in lots A and B while I'm in C. But if I could do contractors, I understand that makes more sense. And I'm certainly fine giving the planning commission and the board those confidences that of what's going there rather than the unknown.
Make sure it's a use allowed in that zoning district, okay? Make sure in your industrial zoning district that it's allowed. It's not a special use. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I just want to hollow in on, or narrow in on 2 things that Catherine brought up that I think that I would walk away with. Those are your biggest things to wrestle. One is the outdoor storage does run counter to the direction of the master plan. And so that's hard. And then the other thing is, if you go the route of conditional, you have to do, when you lock that conditional in, it's locked, it's on that property, right? So then you have to go back and change it if X didn't happen. So those are two things that are sort of running two different races, right? And so you want to make sure that but I'd be willing to table it if you want to go back and consider a different way. The other option is we just continue to do what we're doing and do our action and recommendation of the board. And you could also go back and do the conditional with that on the table, but that's going to put you back in front of the township board. And then, so either way, I'm good with.
Can I ask just a couple more questions?
Yes, Kathy.
Just to make sure I understood, if you do the conditional rezoning, it cannot be listed as a special use. It has to be a primary use under the zoning.
Well, exactly, because through the conditional, we can't give you a blessing to do a special use as well, right? Because that is an extra step that needs additional review. So it's my opinion, you cannot. I think if we look at the Zoning Enabling Act, it is you can do uses that are allowed in the zoning district. So, then you'd have to like rezone to industrial and then still do a special use. I mean, so I really wouldn't, I think it would be very challenging, but not impossible.
Okay. And then the other question is this idea of outdoor storage. Is there a definition of what outdoor storage is? Because when I think of outdoor storage, I think of someone storing like huge industrial crates outside that are there, or storing materials outside or something like that, as opposed to parking cars.
Well, I'm just looking, and I think some of the public brought this up. So page 48 of the master plan says, any use which requires the need for outdoor storage is not, and not is all in capital letters, compatible with the mixed use land use designation. So I can't answer that. I'm the attorney. But I think the planning commission probably has an idea when they wrote the master plan, what they were thinking of. And, it seems to me anything stored outdoors, you want to do an indoor storage yard, build a building, put it inside, rock on, but this is in their master plan. And I think we just heard them say they spent a lot of time thinking about this, and for a variety of reasons, as mentioned. I can't define it though.
Township ordinance does not define outdoor storage either.
Yeah, it doesn't. And my other planning commission members can help me on this, but when we put that in there, we were concerned because we did look at industrial. We looked at all these zoning districts that are under mixed use. And like I said, this property, this area of the township is very interesting because it has infrastructure, and people say, do your development where there's infrastructure. We heard that loud and clear. But it also has Letts Creek. It also has a huge ag and, sort of a low density residential around it. And so we had to say, whatever happens here, needs to respect those two things. And outdoor storage, of course, is when you get into someone says, well, you can put a junkyard there, or we could do this. And I just remember the conversation from what I can remember, and it was years ago, that outdoor storage was concerning. And so the person helping us with our master plan said, well, if it's concerning, put it in there. So I think what you have here is a unique type of storage that we probably didn't think about. We didn't think about someone bringing in something that's only going to stay there a day or two or a week, or we just, unfortunately, we didn't think of all what an outdoor storage could be. So, but that's part of what we have to interpret when we do a zoning change.
Somewhere today, I believe it could have been talking to Mr. Bloom, and I'm searching, and like, I'll trust you. You say it's not in their definition of storage. He'd thrown up that it was 30 days, and again, if it's, you guys know it way better than I do. But his suggestion was, if it's going to sit there that long, you got 3 other lots, move it. But again, that's where we're just trying to define what storage is. And Kathy and I have had that conversation. Is it storage or is it a parking lot? Boy, any guidance or conversation would be great, and we're trying to define that too. But again, it sounds reasonable that I think I would table it and bring you back 3 uses for 3 parcels.
Yeah, and honestly, when I think of tabling things, I don't like to do it because I don't like to go through it all again. But in this case, at least that gives you the opportunity to sit down with maybe Carol and some other folks and figure out those issues, which are the land divisions applicable, and is storage something we can figure out? I mean, because again, it's not just up to the planning commission. The township board has to sort of think about this too. And I know the board sometimes will sit down with people and try to think about that. So, well, I'm hearing maybe we should table this. And I don't know, planning commission members, what do you want to do?
So move. Let's table it.
Steve?
Yeah, I would say let's, table it and let him come back with some other possibilities for us.
Agreed.
Mr. Sandy, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with tabling.
So that's enough. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Kern. It's up to you.
Yes, let's, if that'll make everyone feel better. As I said early on, I'm not here. I attempted to do my due diligence. I did talk to Carol early on. Charlie talked to the planning commission. So I'm not trying to waste your time or mine or a lot of money that has been invested in this. That is frustrating. Trust me, that it's difficult enough in today's business environment to keep going, and let alone spend tens of thousands of dollars spinning my wheels. That's not really what I'm after.
And I just want to be clear to everyone on this call that the planning commission, we could totally move forward right now and give a negative recommendation to the board, and then, you could figure it out there too. But I think the better process is, if you want to try some of these other ideas, this table it, let you think about those, and maybe you come back and say, nah, just go ahead and do whatever you're going to do on the zoning. If you're going to not recommend it, then, we'll do something else. But at least that gives you time to maybe think about it a different way.
And again, I don't think I'm that much of a hardballer. I'm here to attempt to, appease as many as we can. That's what we, so I appreciate the second stab at it. That I got some more feedback. I got some more input. Let's see if I can't make you comfortable with what we're proposing.
Alrighty then. We did have a motion from Mr. Barris and a second from Sandy to table this this request for rezoning. I don't know if we call it a table or postpone. What's better? It's a public hearing, so we want to.
The public hearing's been closed, right?
Yep.
So you're just gonna table it until it's next, ready for them to come back. If the applicant changes his application, then it would be a new application. We would do a new public hearing.
Right. Okay. So public hearing's closed. We're going to table it for any additional information to come back. You come back, and then we can either dispose of it one way or the other, or maybe you say, I'm going to start all over and do a different type. So, okay. That's the motion, is to table it. And it's been seconded. Any other comments from members? Not hearing any. Let me get my list out here. Roll call vote. Mr. Barris.
Yes.
Mr. Eisman.
Yes.
Leah.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Mike.
Yes.
And Sandy.
Yes.
Well, we tabled. So we appreciate all your work. We know this is confusing, and we appreciate the public's comment, because as hopefully you heard, we hear you and we agree with you on a lot of this. So let's look at this again.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mr. Kern. And thank you, Catherine, for joining us tonight in Robert's absence.
You're welcome.
Very helpful. We do have another item that is just needs some quick action by the Planning Commission. That is a memorialization of our February 25th final site plan approval for Chelsea Springs. Carol can fill in the details, but apparently they have satisfied those conditions or those items that they've attacked those items, and we want to memorialize this to take it to the board, right, Carol? Are you muted?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yep. I did hear you. Now I don't hear you. Get a bad connection. Yep, I did hear. I didn't hear.
Are you there?
There. Now you are.
Can you hear me
Go
now?
ahead. Yep. Is it just me, or is Carol standing on her roof with one arm,
We can't hear.
looking for cell phone signal? Oh, she's on her landline. What's going on?
I make a motion to
Is
delay.
that any,
There you go.
is that any better?
Yeah, hurry up. Say what you got to say.
Okay. I was just going to say, they pretty much have satisfied everything. The Part 41 just went in, and there's a few other conditions. We're getting wrapped up with the development agreement. Ideally, we would like to get this to the board for April 6th. However, there's a few things outstanding because we had a little bit of a delay pending who was going to take responsibility for this. So anyway, this is one of the parts of the package that needs to get before the township board, is this memorialization, so they can see what the planning commission approved.
Right. So this action item would be to send this on to the township board, correct?
The memorialization, yep, because you've already done that, is to approve this to go on to the township board. The memorialization is just that piece that finalize that so the board can see what the planning commission did.
Yep, exactly. Okay. I will make a motion to approve and send on the memorialization to the township board.
I'll second it.
Second by Leah. Any other discussion among members on the motion? Hearing none, we will do a roll call vote. Tom? Steve?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Mike?
Yep. Yes.
And Sandy?
Yes, yes.
Unanimous. There we go. Thank you. That brings us to our communications. Let's see. We have the zoning map issue that we had the work session on. We have to set a public hearing. Is that correct? Carol says yes, it is. She talked to me about this. That is correct. All right. So we have to set a public hearing. I wish I could hear from Carol because I don't know what we have on April's agenda other than maybe this comes back and then the
Chelsea Squares.
well, the next thing on our list is Chelsea Springs 2 update.
Hear me?
I can hear you now. Hurry up.
So, Flower Barn on Hoppy Road. However, they do not have architectural drawings, and I informed them of that. So I don't know if they're going to resubmit so we can get that in. That's one application.
Yeah, I think we lost Carol again.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we say that, yes, Carol, if the agenda is not too packed, and we'll leave it up to you and I discussing later, we will try to do this zoning map change in April. I will leave a caveat. I won't be at the April meeting, unfortunately. So maybe that factors in. I don't know. But Carol, you and I can talk about that. Chelsea Springs 2. update. Anything to say on that? Yeah, we'll get that in email. All right, late at night. Anything else from anybody else? Hearing none. All right, appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Barris, seconded by myself. All those in favor, Mr. Tom,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Mike
Yep.
and Sandy.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 9:36. Just a short one. Thank you all.